"You're a nobody, Idris. Your brother's the one she deserves." My father roared those words in my face moments after my beloved Noor, the woman I poured my heart into, married my own brother, Sami, shattering my world and exposing a family betrayal so cruel it drove me to silence until 4 years later, when I returned to face their shocked, pale faces with a truth they couldn't escape. My father shouted those words straight to my face right after the wedding of my girlfriend, the woman I loved deeply, to my own younger brother. In that moment, I realized I had never truly been seen as an important part of this family despite sacrificing everything for them. I left in silence. 4 years later, when we met again, their faces paled in shock. Idris, 42 years old, living in Pine Hollow, a small town nestled among the endless wheat fields of Kansas. My life revolves around the lumber mill, where I work from early morning until the sun sets. The smell of fresh wood and the roar of the saw have become part of my very being. I work not just to survive, but to keep my family from falling apart. My father, Farid, my mother, Jamila, and my younger brother, Sami, they are all I have. But sometimes I wonder if I truly belong here. "You're wasting your life here," I muttered to myself, staring at my calloused hands after another grueling shift. I've been the backbone of the family since I was young. My mother has heart disease, and the medical bills pile up like mountains. My father, a retired construction worker, no longer has the strength to earn a living. Sami, my younger brother, is in college, dreaming of becoming successful without ever taking a proper job. I send money for my mother's treatment, pay Sami's tuition, and sometimes buy small things to keep my father happy. I don't complain because I'm the eldest, but deep inside, there's an emptiness I dare not touch. Why am I never enough? I whispered alone at night, the weight of their expectations crushing me. Sami has been spoiled by our parents since he was a child. He spends money recklessly, buying expensive clothes and going to bars while I wear the same worn-out shirts. My parents always said Sami had potential, while I was just Idris, the worker, the provider. I remember the nights when my mother hugged me, whispering that she was proud of me, but the next morning, she'd praise Sami for a school presentation. I smiled, nodded, and kept working. "You're our pride, Sami," Mom would say, her eyes glowing, while I stood silently in the shadows. Perhaps my parents' love for me was something quiet, overshadowed by the brilliance they imagined Sami would bring. I never thought about marriage. My time was consumed by extra shifts, driving my mother to the hospital or sitting up at night balancing expenses. But then Noor appeared, like a ray of sunlight filtering through the trees. She worked at the bakery in the center of town with a gentle smile and eyes as bright as an autumn lake. We met when I stopped by to buy bread for my mother, and from awkward small talk, we started dating. Noor was different from Pine Hollow. She didn't judge or compare. She listened as I talked about my long days at the mill, about dreams I didn't dare voice aloud, like opening my own machinery repair shop. We walked along the riverbank, ate ice cream on summer evenings, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just living to carry burdens. I fell in love with Noor, and I thought she loved me too. "You make me feel alive, Idris," she said once, her hand in mine, and I believed her with every fiber of my soul. After 3 years together, I began to dream of a small house just for the two of us. But life never lets me dream for long. My mother's condition worsened, and the doctor said she needed surgery. The cost was like a knife to the heart. I took a job far from home at a lumber mill 3 hours away from Pine Hollow. The pay was good, but I had to stay there for 3 months. I didn't want to leave Noor, but she held my hand and said, "Idris, I'll wait for you. Your family needs you. Don't go," I pleaded, my voice breaking. She kissed me softly. "I'll be here, Idris, I promise." I hugged her tightly, promised to call every night, and got in the car with a heavy heart. The days at the new mill were a nightmare. I worked 14 hours a day, slept in a cramped boarding room, and spent every night calling Noor. Her voice over the phone was the only thing keeping me going. But gradually the calls became less frequent. She said she was busy or tired. I tried to believe it was just the distance, that everything would be fine when I returned. "Noor, are you okay?" I asked during a rare call, my heart sinking at her silence. "I'm fine," she said, her voice distant. "Just don't worry." I didn't know that back in Pine Hollow, everything was changing. My father, Farid, always had his own way of looking at life. To him, Sami was the future, the one who would lift the family out of this small town. In his eyes, I was just a laborer, a 42-year-old man with nothing but his work. While I was away, he started saying things to Noor that I never could have imagined. He told her Sami was more stable, that he had a job in the city after graduating, that I, Idris, would never give her a good life. He said I was too old, that I wasn't worthy of her. "You're throwing your life away on him," Farid told her, his voice dripping with contempt. "Sami's the man you need." Noor, the gentle girl I loved, began to waver. I don't entirely blame her. She was young, only 30, and my father had a way of making people believe his words. Sami, with his flashy appearance and grand promises, became the safe choice in her eyes. I didn't know any of this while I was still breaking my back at the mill, counting the days until I could return home. The day I came back to Pine Hollow, I brought a bouquet of wildflowers I picked by the roadside and a small bracelet I bought for Noor. I had dreamed of the moment I could hold her again, tell her about my time away. But when I stepped into town, I saw her hand in hand with Sami in front of the bakery. On her finger was an engagement ring sparkling in the sunlight. My heart stopped. I stood there, the flowers falling to the ground, and the world around me blurred. Noor looked at me, her eyes filled with confusion and regret, but she said nothing. Sami just smiled, that smug smile I'd seen 1,000 times, as if he always knew he'd win. "How could you?" I choked out, my voice raw. Noor's eyes filled with tears. "Idris, I'm sorry," she whispered. Sami laughed, cruel. "You never stood a chance, brother." I walked home, my heart heavy as lead. My father was sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. I asked him, my voice trembling, "Why?" He looked at me coldly and said, "Sami has a future, Idris. He'll take better care of Noor. You don't have what it takes to make her happy." "You're my father," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "How could you betray me like this?" He didn't flinch. "You're nothing compared to Sami. Accept it." His words were like a knife, cutting deep into the years I'd sacrificed for this family. I stepped toward him, my voice shaking but unstoppable. "I've done everything for this family," I said, tears welling up. "I've worked myself to exhaustion to pay for Mom's medicine, sent money for Sami's college. I gave up my dreams, my life, and yet you've never looked at me, never said I was good enough." I poured it all out. The years of silent sacrifice, the sleepless nights of worry, the times I swallowed my tears when my parents praised Sami and forgot me. I waited, hoping for an apology, a hug, anything. But my father just looked at me, his eyes cold as stone. "You're just a laborer. Don't compare yourself to your brother. Noor will have a better future." With his words were like a blade, shredding the last shred of hope I had. I looked at him, then at Sami standing behind him, and finally at Noor, who was looking down in the yard. I realized that in Pine Hollow, I was nothing more than the eldest son, a worker, a forgotten man. That night, I packed a few clothes, took the little savings I had, and got in the car. I drove away, not looking back, with a vow in my heart. I would not let this family destroy me. I would build a new life where I wouldn't be looked down upon. I drove through the night, the faint glow of streetlights on the highway guiding me to Wichita. Pine Hollow faded into the distance, but the pain didn't. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. My father, Sami, Noor, the people I once loved most, now felt like sharp cuts in my heart. I whispered to myself, "You took everything, but you won't take my future." I told myself this wasn't running away, this was starting over. Wichita greeted me with unfamiliar streets and the blaring of car horns. I had no clear plan, just a few thousand in my pocket and an old pickup truck. I rented a parking spot on the outskirts of the city, turning the back seat into a bed. At night, the whistle of wind through the truck's windows made me miss home, but I gritted my teeth. Home? I didn't have a home anymore. I found work at a steel factory on the city's outskirts. The job was grueling, the smell of metal and machine oil clinging to my skin. I worked day shifts, sometimes night shifts, to make ends meet. In the beginning, I was nearly exhausted. My hands grew calloused, my back ached, but I didn't stop. Every dollar I earned was a brick in the foundation of the future I swore I'd build. I whispered to myself, "You called me worthless, Dad. I'll prove you wrong." But it wasn't the work that wore me down. It was the loneliness. I ate alone in my truck, listening to the radio to drown out the noise in my heart. On long nights, I dreamed of Noor, her smile, only to wake up to the reality that she had chosen Sammy. I wondered if I was truly as worthless as my father had said. There were moments when I wanted to return to Pine Hollow, to beg my father for forgiveness, just to feel like I belonged somewhere. But no, I wouldn't go back. "You don't own me anymore," I muttered, staring at the stars through my truck's windshield. One evening, as the neon lights of Wichita flickered outside my truck's window, I decided I had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, sleeping in my truck, working like a machine. I found a nearby community college and enrolled in an evening course in mechanical engineering. The tuition ate up nearly all my savings, but I thought if I didn't invest in myself, I'd never break free. The classroom was a new world. The people around me, young and old, each carried their own stories. I sat in the corner, listening to the instructor explain engines and transmission systems. For the first time in months, I felt like I was living, not just surviving. But I kept my distance, not wanting anyone to know I was a guy sleeping in his truck, a man abandoned by his family. Then I met Aisha. She sat next to me in class, her hair tied high and a notebook full of scribbles. Aisha was 34, working part-time at an auto repair shop, studying to become an engineer. She had a straightforward but warm way of speaking, as if nothing in the world scared her. One day as I struggled with the circuit assignment, she glanced over and said, "Idris, you messed up this step. Let me show you." I was embarrassed, but she laughed and said, "Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is fixing them. You're better than you think," she added, her eyes kind but piercing. "Stop hiding." From then on, we started talking more. Aisha told me she grew up in a tough family and had been on her own since she was 19. She didn't judge me when I shared about Pine Hollow, about leaving without a goodbye. "Family isn't always a safe place, Idris," she said one time as we sat drinking coffee after class. "Sometimes you have to build your own family." "They broke my heart," I admitted, my voice low. She squeezed my hand. "Then rebuild it, Idris. You're stronger than they know." Her words were like a spark piercing the dark corners of my heart. Aisha helped me regain my confidence, but the past still haunted me. Some nights I lay in my truck, staring at the dark ceiling, wondering why I wasn't good enough for my father, for Noor. I remembered the times my mother hugged me, saying she was proud, but then I'd recall how she stayed silent when my father compared me to Sami. Those memories were like a whirlpool pulling me down. I whispered to myself, "Why didn't you fight for me, Mom? Why was I never enough?" But every morning I got up, went to work, went to class, because I knew if I stopped, I'd lose. One day, Aisha invited me to a small diner after class. She ordered a plate of fries and made me share. "You're getting thin, Idris," she said, half joking, half serious. I laughed, the first time in months. We talked about our dreams. Aisha wanted to design car engines, and I admitted my dream of opening a machinery repair shop. "Then do it," she said, as if everything in the world were simple. "You've got skilled hands and a sharp mind. Don't let the past hold you back." "You really think I can?" I asked, my voice trembling with doubt. She leaned forward, fierce. "I know you can, Idris. Don't let them steal your future." I looked at Aisha, my heart warming. She didn't know it, but her words were like a lifeline, pulling me out of the darkness. I started saving every penny, not just to survive, but to make my dream a reality. I moved from the truck to a small, cramped apartment, but it was enough to call home. Every evening I studied, sketched machine diagrams, and thought about the future. Wichita was no longer a strange place. It was becoming where I belonged. But deep down, I still carried Pine Hollow. I wondered if my father ever thought of me, if Sami felt any regret. And Noor? Was she happy? Those questions were like heavy stones in my heart. But I didn't let them drag me down. I had chosen this path and I would keep going one step at a time. I whispered to myself, "You're not their shadow anymore, Idris. You're building your own light." Wichita was starting to feel like home, even if just a small corner of my heart. The steel factory was still where I poured my sweat every day, but I wasn't just working to survive anymore. I was working to build a future I could shape myself. The extra shifts, the nights studying at the community college, they were like the first bricks of a new house, one where I wouldn't be looked down upon. I learned quickly, not because I was particularly smart, but because I was hungry. The mechanical engineering course taught me how to repair machines and read technical drawings, but more importantly, it gave me the belief that I could achieve something greater. I still lived in that cramped apartment, with its stained walls and creaky bed, but I started saving. Every coin I dropped into a glass jar was a reminder I was moving forward. Aisha made everything more bearable. She was like a cool breeze in the stifling heat of Wichita. After class, we'd often sit at a cheap cafe near the college, splitting a plate of fries and talking about everything. Aisha shared stories of working 2 jobs to pay off her student loans and her dream of designing car engines. I spoke less, but she had a way of getting me to open up. "Idris, you're stronger than you realize," she said once, when I admitted I was still haunted by my father's words. "People can hurt you, but they don't get to define you." "You're my anchor, Aisha," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She smiled softly. "And you're mine, Idris. We'll rise together." Her words were like a small flame warming the cold corners inside me. We became close friends, though sometimes I wondered if there could be more, but I wasn't ready. The wound from Noor still ached like a thorn lodged deep in my heart. Every time Aisha smiled, I thought of Noor, then of my father's cold stare and Sammy's smug grin. I was afraid to open up, afraid of being betrayed again. Aisha seemed to understand and never pushed me. She was just there, a friend, a companion. At the factory, I started to stand out. I fixed a broken production line that no one else could figure out, and my boss, a quiet man named Malik, called me into his office. "You've got talent, Idris," he said. "Don't waste it." A month later, I was promoted to line supervisor. The pay was better, and I moved to a small apartment in the city center. It wasn't fancy, just a living room, a kitchen nook, and a window overlooking the street, but to me, it was everything. Aisha was the first to visit. She brought a small potted plant, grinning. "So, your place looks less like a warehouse." We sat on the floor, ate pizza, and she made me talk about my dream of opening a machinery repair shop. I hesitated, but she wouldn't let me shy away. "Do you have a plan?" she asked, serious. I shook my head, embarrassed. She grabbed a piece of paper and made me list what I'd need: capital, equipment, customers. "Start small, Idris," she said, "but you have to start." "I'm scared I'll fail," I confessed, my voice barely audible. She grabbed my shoulders and fierce, "You won't, Idris, you're unstoppable." I looked at Aisha, gratitude swelling inside me. She wasn't just a friend. She was someone who believed in me more than I believed in myself. That night alone, I sketched out plans for the repair shop in my mind. I imagined a small but clean space with the hum of well-running machines and customers who trusted me. The dream no longer felt out of reach. It was getting closer, day by day. Time passed quickly in Wichita. 4 years later, I stood in front of my own machinery repair shop, a small building on the city's outskirts. The sign, Idris's Mechanics, hung above the door, its white paint gleaming in the sunlight. I still remember the first day I opened the shop, my hands trembling as I cut the ribbon, with only Aisha and Malik there to clap. Now my shop has 4 employees and a long list of clients, from local businesses to nearby farms. It wasn't easy. I took out a large loan to buy equipment, and for the first few months, I barely slept. I repaired machines, handled the books, and searched for clients. But I didn't do it alone. Malik introduced me to his old business contacts, and Aisha helped me design a more efficient workflow. She's now an engineer working for an automotive manufacturing company, but she still spends weekends helping me. "You owe me a proper dinner for this," she teased, but I know she doesn't expect repayment. That's just Aisha, always giving without asking for anything in return. I whispered to myself, "You're my family now, Aisha. Thank you for seeing me. The shop grew faster than I expected. I paid off the loan, hired more staff, and expanded the space. I still live simply, staying in my small apartment, eating modest meals. Success to me isn't about money or fame. It's the feeling of standing in my shop, hearing the hum of machines, knowing I built this all on my own. I'm no longer Idris, the laborer from Pine Hollow. I'm Idris, the man who overcame his own darkness. My relationship with Aisha remains a friendship, though at times I sense something deeper. I want to tell her, but every time I try, Noor's image resurfaces, along with the fear of being hurt again. Aisha doesn't push me, she just stays by my side quietly. Once she gave me a notebook filled with a detailed plan she'd written for expanding the shop. "You'll do it, Idris," she said, "and I'll be here to see it." I hugged her for the first time, feeling my heart pound. Maybe one day I'll be ready. "You're my safe place," I told her, my voice trembling. She smiled, eyes soft. "And you're mine, Idris. Take your time." Despite my success, I still think about Pine Hollow. I haven't called or written, but my mother is always on my mind. I worry about her, wondering if she's being cared for. Part of me wants to know how my father and Sami are doing, but I lack the courage to face them. I'm afraid they'll still see me as a failure, despite how far I've come. Then, one day, the phone rang. The caller's voice trembled, delivering the news that my mother had passed away. I stood frozen, gripping the phone tightly, as if holding on would make the news untrue. My mother, the only person who ever said she loved me, even if only in rare moments, was gone. I knew I had to return to Pine Hollow, not to reconcile, but to say goodbye. Deep down, I was afraid. Afraid of facing my father, Sami, and Noor. Afraid the past would pull me back. I looked out at my shop where my employees were working and told myself, I'm not the Idris I used to be. I've built a new life, one I'm proud of. Pine Hollow can't destroy me anymore. I whispered to myself, you can't hurt me anymore, Dad. I'm stronger now. I packed my bags, my heart heavy, but carrying the confidence Wichita had given me. It was time to face them. I drove back to Pine Hollow, the familiar road unfolding like an old film reel. The endless wheat fields, the weathered wooden houses, everything was the same as the day I left, but I wasn't. Wichita had given me a new life, an Idris who was more confident, stronger. But when the Welcome to Pine Hollow sign appeared, my heart tightened. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the place that had once torn me apart. I arrived at the church where my mother's funeral was being held. The air was heavy, the scent of white roses lingering in the space. I stood at the door watching people file in quietly. They looked at me, whispering as if I were a stranger. Maybe I was. I wore the green shirt my mother always liked, clutching a handkerchief, trying to keep myself steady. My father sat in the front row, older than I remembered, his hair now fully white, his shoulders slightly hunched. Sami was beside him, dressed neatly but avoiding my gaze. Noor was in a far corner wearing a simple black dress, her head bowed. I didn't look at them for long. I focused on my mother's portrait on the altar, her gentle smile seeming to watch me. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Maybe I had shed too many in Wichita. I whispered to myself, I'm here, Mom. I made it, despite them. The pastor read scriptures, his voice low and somber. I barely heard him, lost in thoughts of my mother, the time she hugged me, whispering that I was her pride, even though she stayed silent when my father praised Sami. I didn't fully blame her. She loved me in her own way, but she was weak against my father. When the pastor invited people to speak, I stepped forward, my hands trembling as I held a letter my mother had left behind. I found it in a box of her belongings sent to me by mail before she passed. I read aloud, my voice choked, rising to a raw, piercing crescendo that filled the church. Idris, my son, I'm sorry for not protecting you, for letting your father hurt you. You are the strongest person I know. I'm proud of you forever. Each word was like a knife, both painful and healing. I looked out at the crowd, seeing my father bow his head, Sami shift uncomfortably, and Noor wipe away tears. I wasn't reading for them. I read for my mother to let her know I had heard her. You saw me, Mom, I shouted, my voice breaking, tears streaming down my face. You were the only one who ever did. The funeral ended, and I stood outside the church breathing in the cold Pine Hollow air. I thought I'd leave right away, but then my father approached, followed by Sammy and Noor. He looked at me, his eyes no longer as cold as before, but not warm either. "Idris," he said, his voice low. "You've changed." I nodded, saying nothing. I didn't need his approval anymore, but the silence between us was heavy. Sammy broke it. "You look good, Idris," he said, but his tone was strained. Noor stood behind him, her eyes red as if she wanted to say something, but couldn't. "Say it, Noor," I demanded, my voice sharp. "Tell me why you betrayed me." She sobbed. "I was wrong, Idris. I was weak." Sammy snapped. "Back off, Idris. You're not the victim here," I laughed, bitter. "You stole my life, Sammy. You're nothing without me." I looked at them. The people who once meant the world to me, now just distant figures. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was just tired. I wanted to return to Wichita, to my shop, to Aisha. But I knew I had to stay, just one more time, to close this chapter for good. The evening after the funeral, I sat in the old house where I grew up. The smell of aged wood and the ticking of the clock stirred countless memories. My father had asked me to stay, his voice softer than usual, but I could sense the tension. Sami and Noor came too, as if they knew this was their last chance to say something. We sat around the dining table, none of us touching the coffee cups in front of us. My father spoke first. "Idris, the family's in trouble," he said, eyes fixed on the table. "Sami, he's in a lot of debt. We need your help." I looked at Sami, who bowed his head, not out of shame, but as if waiting for me to agree. Noor bit her lip, her eyes pleading. I remembered the argument 4 years ago when I poured out my heart only to be met with my father's coldness. This time, I didn't let emotions guide me. I whispered to myself, "You're begging now, Dad? After you threw me away?" "Noor," I said, looking straight at her, my voice steady but laced with years of pain. "You speak. Why are you here?" She flinched, her voice trembling. "Idris, I was wrong to choose Sammy. Your father convinced me you couldn't give me a good life. I regret it." "Regret?" I spat, my voice rising. "You tore my heart out, Noor. You let them poison you." She sobbed. "I was scared, Idris. Please, forgive me." I shook my head, cold. "Your regret means nothing now." Her words were sincere, but they came too late. I looked at her, remembering the days we walked by the river, but that feeling had long since died. I turned to Sami. "And you? What do you want?" He shrugged, his tone sharp. "You're doing well now, aren't you? What's so hard about helping the family?" "Help you?" I laughed, my voice dripping with venom. "You stole my love, my life, and you dare ask for my help?" He sneered. "You're pathetic, Idris. Always playing the martyr." I gave a faint smile, not out of amusement, but because I realized he hadn't changed. Still the same Sammy, always demanding without gratitude. Finally, I looked at my father. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, rising to a powerful, unshakable resolve that silenced the room. 4 years ago, I bared my soul. I sacrificed everything for this family. My time, my dreams, my heart. But you chose Sammy. Said I was nothing. Now you want me to save the family. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. You destroyed me, I roared, standing tall, my voice a thunderclap. But I rebuilt myself, and I don't need you anymore. I stood, grabbing my jacket. I built my life without you. Leave me be. Noor burst into tears, calling my name, but I didn't stop. Sami muttered something, probably an insult, but I didn't care. My father looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes, but he said nothing. "You're too late, Dad," I said, my voice cold. "You lost me forever." I walked out of the house without looking back. The cold wind blew, but my heart felt lighter. I had closed the door on Pine Hollow for good. On the drive back to Wichita, I stopped by a field and opened the box of my mother's belongings. Inside was a silver necklace, the one she always wore. I held it tightly, feeling her love, even if it came late. I didn't cry, but I smiled. My mother had seen me, and that was enough. I returned to Wichita as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the windshield. The road stretched ahead, but this time I didn't feel lost. Pine Hollow was behind me, no longer a weight holding me down. My mother's silver necklace rested in my jacket pocket, a reminder that I had been loved, even if quietly. I smiled, took a deep breath, and drove home to my real home. I whispered to myself, "I'm free, Mom. I made you proud." Wichita welcomed me with its familiar rhythm. I stepped into my shop, the sound of machines ringing like a song. My employees, young men with dreams like mine once were, greeted me with smiles. I nodded, diving into work, but my heart was lighter than ever. I had let go of the past, and now I was free to live for myself. Isha was the first to notice the change. She stopped by the shop that weekend, bringing a box of pastries and a radiant smile. "You look different, Idris," she said, sitting in a chair in my small office. I told her about Pine Hollow, about my mother's letter, about how I faced my father, Sami, and Noor. She listened without interrupting, nodding gently when I said I refused to help them. "You did the right thing," she said. "Family isn't something you owe, it's something you choose." "You're my family now, Aisha," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "And you're mine, Idris, always." Her words made me think. I used to believe family was everything, that I had to sacrifice to keep them close. But in Pine Hollow, I was just the eldest son, a laborer, a shadow behind Sami. Wichita taught me that real family is the people who see my worth. Like Aisha, like Malik, like the employees working out there. I didn't need my father's approval or Noor's regret. I just needed myself and those who believed in me. I decided to expand the shop. I hired 2 more employees, bought new equipment, and started taking on bigger contracts. The shop was no longer a dream. It was reality, proof of the years I never gave up. I still lived simply, but I began taking better care of myself. I bought a new jacket, got a proper haircut, and even tried cooking a decent dinner instead of eating instant noodles. Isha laughed heartily when she saw me fumbling in the kitchen, but she stayed, helping me make a plate of spaghetti that wasn't half bad. My relationship with Aisha was still a friendship, but I started feeling something deeper. I was no longer as afraid as before. One evening, as we sat on the couch in my apartment looking out at the city lights, I took her hand. "Aisha," I said softly, "thank you for being there for me." She looked at me, her eyes shining, and squeezed my hand. "You're worth loving, Idris," she whispered. I didn't say I loved her, but I knew not far off I'd be ready. I whispered to myself, "I'm almost there, Aisha. You're healing me." I found a small note in my mother's box, tucked inside an old book. She wrote, "Idris, you are my light. Live for yourself, not for anyone else." I folded the paper and slipped it into my wallet, a final message to carry with me. My mother had seen me, and I would live to make her proud. My story ends here, in front of my shop, where I stand watching my employees work, the hum of machines blending with my heartbeat. I'm not rich or famous, but I'm happy. I overcame betrayal, found my worth, and built a life worth living. Wichita isn't just a city, it's where I found myself, where I learned that happiness doesn't come from others, but from believing in myself. I look toward the horizon, where the sun is rising, and smile. The future is wide open, and this time I'm ready to walk toward it. But as I stand here, a quiet ache lingers, not for their love, but for the man I was, unseen and discarded. I've built a new life, but the scars of their betrayal will always whisper, a reminder that even freedom carries a weight.